Hey everyone, I'm Lorraine Driscoll, founder of Building Better Brains. And I've talked about this before, but I wanted to talk about it again because it comes up so often in like when I'm talking to parents reaching out to me. And I even have people commenting saying, what are primitive reflexes and so forth. So I want to start off by saying this is the thing that a recent study, recent enough, about a year and a half ago, a massive study, the largest study ever done on about 2,000 kids from, different places all over the US, different states all over the US, found that 100% of the kids with learning difficulties, behavior issues, and so forth, like ADHD, learning disabilities, and so on, had retained primitive reflexes. So if your child is struggling, if you're wondering, I don't know where to start, or you're doing the tutoring, but you're seeing some progress, but not as much as you had hoped for, if you've been told there's nothing that you can do, that this is just the way your child is wired, or the way their brain is, then you definitely want to tune into this and learn about primitive reflexes and how it impacts your child's neurology and their brain and their learning, focus, behavior, all of that, because it can be a total game changer. So this study was conducted by Dr. Robert Melillo. And basically, what it found is that the more primitive reflexes that a child had, and the more severely retained they were, meaning they are still present, and I can explain what all this means in a minute, the more severe the breakdown. So the more severe the ADHD, the learning difficulty, the emotional dysregulation, whatever the case may be, the dyslexia, and so on. So you're probably wondering, I don't know what you're talking about. What are primitive reflexes? So if you've never heard of them, the simplest way that I use to describe them, which isn't 100% the most scientific way, but I'm going to start off really simple, is it's really like your child's baby brain. And if your child's baby brain is still on, your child is going to have a hard time basically focusing on, being able to learn and understand and so forth, because they're going to have a hard time accessing their higher brain levels. They're going to have a hard time accessing those higher brain levels that are responsible for focus, regulation, planning, all of that type of stuff. So let me dive a little bit deeper into this. So these are reflexes that your child has when they are an infant, and some of them can be super sweet, some of them are just super cute. One of them, for example, is if you remember whenever your child was maybe only a few days old, and you would place your finger in the palm of their hand, and then they do that sweet little thing that just melts your heart, where they wrap their fingers around your finger and you think, oh my God, they already love me. That's actually a reflex. They totally love you, but it's totally a reflex that's known as the palmar reflex. Or if you remember, if you were someone, whether you breastfed or not, you'd put your child near your chest and they would start doing what's known as the rooting reflex, where they start going like this because they want to nurse. And it can be pretty funny, right, and cute whenever grandpa or dad goes to pick them up and kind of nestles them in their arms, and then they're trying to nurse with grandpa or dad or something. And again, that's that rooting reflex. So there's many reflexes, and their purpose is they're exactly as the word says. They are a reflex. They are not. They are part of the unconscious mind, and they just happen automatically. They don't require any thought, and so they help, number one, to assist your child with survival. And I'm not going to go into all the reflexes and how they do that, but they do. They help them with survival in those early infant stages. So even stuff like, I'll give one example. Where you put them on their belly, for example, and they're automatically going to turn their head, and that's so they don't smother themselves. Okay, so just to kind of give you one example of how it helps with survival. And the other thing they really do is they assist with movement. So they help your child slowly get into those early infant movements that start with rolling over. And then it turns into them being able to creep. And then it starts with that creep evolving into a crawl. And then that crawl evolves into a walk. All of that is because the reflexive action of their body doing these different, movements is helping them urging them basically, or pushing them to get into these different movements, and then to get further into other movements and so forth. So as they move through those movements, your child should be able or should be doing these other movements like creeping, rolling over, crawling, all of those things, because those movements help to assist with brain development. I've talked a lot about crawling. I've talked about creeping, rolling over. All of that type of stuff helps to build your child's brain. So I say it all the time that being smart or intelligent doesn't have to do with how much information you can stuff in your child's brain before JK or before grade 1 or before whatever. It's how well developed their brain is for learning, how primed their brain is for learning. So, in a nutshell, they are really, really crucial, but these reflexes should what we call integrate. They should disappear into the nervous system at a certain age. And like it can be depending on the reflex, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, whatever the case may be. I'm not going to get into all that either. But those reflexes, all of them should be integrated really by age 3 years of age. If they remain, meaning they have not integrated into the nervous system and they still remain, then they are considered retained. And they're still on, so that means it's causing problems for your child. They're no longer serving a purpose with development. They're actually hindering higher development. They're acting as a block. And I like to explain it as 2 ways. Number one, it's kind of like an instrument that holds its note too long in a band. Like if you think of like a band with like saxophones and clarinets and all the, the big brass bands and all that. It's like an instrument that holds its note too long and it's drowning out the sounds of the other instrument. It's like, ugh. Kind of like that. But the other explanation or comparison I like to give is, you go online sometimes, you get on a website, you're like, oh, this looks like good information. All of a sudden a pop-up comes on and you can't get the pop-up to go away. So you can't access the information that you actually want to access. So what happens is sometimes you'll just be like, whatever, I can't figure this out. I'll go somewhere else. Sometimes you can get it to go away. This is really what's happening to your child. Sometimes they're able to get up to their cortex, they're able to override it, but these reflexes that are retained are creating hindrances or blocks for your child to access their higher brain levels. And more than that, it's going to cause issues with coordination, with movement, emotional regulation, all kinds of stuff, which I've gone through before and I talk about all the time. So basically what happens is your child could be starting school with a weak developmental foundation in terms of their brain. And this is going to affect very basic skills like writing, like coordination, fine motor skills. It could affect eye tracking. It could affect their ability to sit still, their ability to focus, their ability to organize ideas in their mind, their ability to impulse control, all the stuff that you think they just need to get a hang of it, or just practice more, or just snap out of it and do this. No, not until those reflexes are integrated. So as I mentioned, the more reflexes that are retained, the more severe the breakdown is going to be with the behavior, the learning, the speech, coordination, whatever the problem is. So as I said, it's going to affect various things. Other things it can affect is balance. I mentioned regulating emotions. It can even impact aggression. And I'm giving a lot of examples in terms of behavior, learning, cognition, all that type of stuff, but it can affect even like gut health, immunity. Some of these kids are hyperimmune. Some of them are hypoimmune. Sometimes they have lots of allergies. Sometimes they have asthma. And I don't want to say that it's just as simple as that, but they all have an impact on the physical health of our children as well, not just the cognitive and mental health. So basically, when there is weak connections in the brain, when there is things like poor brain chemistry, these are going to cause breakdown for our children. And the first place you want to start, if your child has a learning or behavioral difficulty, is looking at what is their nutrition like, their gut health and nutrition. What is their brain development like? Do they have retained reflexes? There's so much more to brain development than just reflexes, but that's what I'm talking about today because it comes up a lot. And with all of these things, not just reflexes, but I see this all the time, and this is what I really have noticed is a commonality, that the severity of your child's difficulty is directly linked to how imbalanced their gut health is, how toxic they might be in pesticides, heavy metals, and so forth, how deficient they might be in certain nutrients, how many food allergies they have, as well as how many primitive reflexes they have, how severely retained it is, and as well as other stuff I've talked about, like how imbalanced is their brain hemispheres? Do they have a slightly weak right brain and overdeveloped left brain, or is it like really big gap here where this is where these kids we have like who are what we call twice exceptional, right? Genius in one area and then struggle beyond belief, could even be severely developmentally delayed in certain other areas. So that is where you want to start looking at where are the core or root causes that are causing the breakdown, and tackling those things first. And it's always right action at the right time. You have to do I say that with my clients a lot whenever sometimes people reach out to me, they want to do my 6-month program, and they'll say, well, we tried this, but I'm like, yeah, but you didn't do this first. And this has to come first with brain development. And then this has to come last, or this has to come in the middle. So it's all about right action at the right time. So I'm sharing this today, and everything I share is always hopeful that your child is not stuck with a permanent disorder, disability, challenge. These things can be overcome when we improve the brain chemistry and when we also improve their connectivity in their brain, address retained reflexes, brain hemisphere imbalance, all of that type of stuff. Then their performance improves, their cognition, their language, their mathematical abilities. And that's what the research showed with Dr. Malilo, is that when these kids did a 12-week program of just working on retained reflexes, not even the other stuff, they made significant improvements in their performance in both cognition, language, mathematical abilities, behavior, motor skills, all that type of stuff significantly improved or completely improved. So do not underestimate the power of functional neurology and the ability of the brain to change. It is 100% absolutely plastic, and don't believe anyone who tells you any different. So that being said, you might be wondering, does my child have retained primitive reflexes? Does my child have imbalanced brain hemispheres? All that other stuff that I talked about. I recently created the advanced brain screening. It would normally be $297. It's on sale right now for $197, and it walks you through how to screen at home for all of these core weak areas that are ultimately what contributes to the breakdown. Whether the diagnosis is ADHD, LD, OCD, ADHD, autism spectrum, all of the above, we're not looking at acronyms or diagnosis. We are looking at the core reason why kids struggle, what is causing your child to have to work so hard to learn or manage their emotions compared to their peers. Where is the breakdown happening? So I'm going to post the link for that in the comments below. If you want to book a free clarity call because you actually want to learn more about my 6-month program where we address all of this and put it all together, right action at the right time, you can do that. Reach out to me, email me, whatever the case may be. And if you know somebody who can benefit, as usual, tag, share, and so forth. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.